Hello, I'm Kurt Lidke, Executive Director of Klamath Film, and you just watched a stop-motion animation student group project, Recipe for Birds. With us is the project's director, Deanna Morse. Thank you, Deanna, so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's exciting to be part of this film festival.
This film is only 2 minutes long, but it is absolutely adorable from the opening frames. But please explain the student project that created it, how it all came together. It's the ASIFA workshop, right?
Yeah, it's ASIFA, the International Animation Society, and it's from a French acronym, the Association Internationale du Film d'Animation. So that's how we get ASIFA. And for actually since the 70s, they've been doing this project where student or artist teachers work with students around the globe to make films on a common theme. And I've been involved for a couple of decades. We do it once a year, and there are about 36 different workshop groups in different parts of the country, the globe, actually. There are only a couple in America. But after we decide on a theme, then we work with children to do something around that theme, and it needs to be in a 2-minute parameters. That's the framework for it. Then all the films are stitched together and shown at an international festival. In fact, this one was shown just last week in Portugal, and it's already been shown in Croatia and a couple other countries, European countries. But the theme that year was recipes from your home country. And I didn't really want to do apple pie or deviled eggs or something like that. So I
Deep fried everything would be the American approach, right?
That's true, the state fair approach, yeah. But I took a felting workshop with a local artist named Corbin Brashear, and she taught me that how to make these darling birds out of felt. And she said she worked with children doing it. And this was right before lockdown. So Corbin and I got together with some kids, and the kids felted the birds, did the animation, and then a couple more kids made the pine cone with the recipe for what we're going to feed birds in our backyard if we are doing the cooking.
I personally don't have the patience for stop motion animation, but I have the absolute utmost respect for those that do it. It looks amazing. Nothing looks quite like stop motion. But to create just 2 minutes of footage, it takes so much work and effort. How many photos and frames did you and the kids have to produce to create this film, and how long was the workshop?
Well, that's interesting. We did the workshop over about, I guess it would be about a week altogether, but it was with scheduling problems, maybe a little more than a week. And then I edited it, which took several weeks. But there are like 880 frames for each minute, so it'd be about 1,700, 1,800 individual shots, in the film. And I'll tell you, one of the delightful things about working with stop motion and these kids, they'd never done animation before. And the way you do it is you just move the bird a little bit, click a frame, move the bird, click a frame, move a bird, click a frame. Of course, you take your hands out of there. You've got it, propped up on something. But when the bird comes alive, it is so magical. And the children just went nuts. I mean, there was squealing for minutes and minutes that the bird was alive, became a living being through the art of animation. And that's what makes all the patience and the time and the slowness of the creation worthwhile, when your character actually physically seems to come alive on film.
Have you done a lot of stop motion work before this?
I have. I studied animation. Well, I was actually self-taught, but I became an animator when I was in college. And one of my kind of life goals has been to make a film every year of my adult life. And I have, since I graduated from college in the early 70s. So a lot of my work has been under the camera. I've never worked with felt before, and I don't really like puppets because gravity makes them want to fall down. But I do a lot of flat artwork under the camera and a lot of experimental techniques. I'm interested in what you can only do in animation.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Working with these felt props and vertically as opposed to on a straight set, any sort of flubs where maybe the prop got knocked over? Because I know in stop motion, everything has to, don't touch the camera except for taking the photo. Don't move the prop except for ever so slightly, because otherwise you could ruin the entire project if it's not set just right. But when you're working with kids, though, that's not always a concept. So were there any issues where props got bumped, or you had to go back and redo some things?
We definitely did some reshooting, and it is a kind of a rough project. You can see the wires holding the birds onto the trees and
Mhm.
things like that. So we didn't try to. If it was a commercial project, you'd go back in and you'd rotoscope those out, and we didn't try to hide anything. We let the process be part of what we shared.
So you shot this last year, and we all know how difficult it is just to make a film in general. But global circumstances, what they are, have complicated that process immensely. Did COVID impact the production of this, if any?
Well, it was finished right before lockdown, and then I edited it. And I guess the main thing is that it was supposed to have a few premieres, like in Hiroshima, and that didn't work because of COVID. So it hasn't had as much festival screening as our children's projects usually get. But I think that it will. It screened in France, Portugal, Croatia, Greece, Belgium. I mean, it's been part of a pretty big screening. And look, now in Oregon. So that's exciting.
Working with kids can always be a little bit tricky, especially when you're dealing with really complex filmmaking concepts. I know I just taught a week-long film camp for middle school and high school kids here in Klamath. Um, Something like this that also requires a lot of patience and a lot of focus. How do you keep the kids motivated and working for the entire week?
Well, fortunately, with this project, we're able to pre-select the kids. So when I work with collaboratively with another teacher, we pick children that we think have the patience and attention to do this. Because I know when I've done workshops where it's open to like everybody, yeah, some of the kids are just bouncing off the walls and it's hard to get them to sit down. I mean, some kids really love this slow moving focused activity, and other kids just find it absolutely crazy making,
Mhm.
like most of filmmaking.
The story concept for Recipe for Birds, I know you had the 2-minute parameter and it had to be about recipes. Um, it sounded like you had the concept relatively put together going into the group project, but did the kids be actively involved in sort of the story arc that the film had?
Yeah, these children, the felting artist children, had all studied birds, and we did some research about what birds ate based on their beak sizes and shapes. And we were going to include a lot of that in the film, but it just got a little too difficult. So they each created a bird and thought about what that bird would eat, and then created what that bird would eat, like the flower that the hummingbirds ate and the spider that the woodpecker is eating. The kids created what the food source was. And then we decided to do the pine cone thing too. So it was kind of an evolving project. We did some animation experiments with the kids. Then, after we saw what we could do, we did storyboards and very rough storyboards, and then just sort of let the thing run from that.
Okay, great. What do you hope that people get out of watching Recipe for Birds?
Well, I think the film is very joyful, and we need some joy at this time of lockdown. And it also, bird watching is a huge American hobby, and I think it also sort of foregrounds that notion of looking outside of your window and seeing life out there and birds out there and listening to birds. And so I think it's a connection with the natural world. I hope a little hit of joyful happiness.
Well, thank you, Deanna, so much for collaborating on this film with kids. It is such a joy to watch this film and to know that kids are discovering the joys of filmmaking and hopefully perhaps want to continue to pursue it is fantastic. Thank you for being a part of the Klamath Independent Film Festival. Recipe for Birds will screen on Sunday, September 19th at 10:30 a.m. in our K through 12 student category. Now, obviously, you are not a K through 12 student, but we felt that since this was a student collaborative effort, that it made sense to put this into our K through 12 category. And it will be available on demand all week. Deanna, thank you so much for the time and for the insight on your film. And we look forward to showcasing it at the Ross Ragland Theater.
Great. Thank you, Kurt. I'm sorry that I won't be there in person, but I'm looking forward to seeing it online.